Okay, welcome everyone. Welcome to the Tuesday meeting of the BOCC. We have Mr. Larry Wood here today to give us the invocation. We want to rise for that, and then we'll follow it with the pledge.
God, I thank you for the Christian history of the founding fathers of our nation. And I thank you that there's many people who love the biblical heritage our country has. And I pray that you would grace these men with the wisdom to continue in the tradition that American greatness has, with a love of the Constitution, with a love of liberty, and a love of freedom. So I pray that you would bless these men, and I thank you that they're here to serve us. In your name I pray, amen.
The pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I would entertain a review motion on the minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes of January 21st.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the minutes. Any questions, comments, changes that we see? Okay, seeing none, we'll call for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye, thank you. I'll run down through consent agenda, agreements, contract, bid awards. We have affidavit of property tax refunds for 2024 on a yearly basis. Our treasurer has to file some reports. And so we're complying with law, and it's basically taxes that have not been collected and won't be collected. And that amounts in mainly on this first one, it involves a lot. It's mainly businesses that have closed and we don't have contact anymore. It's been mobile homes that have been taken off or destroyed or something. And that amounts, this year amounts to about a little over $86,000. Call for hearings. Our first 2025 budget amendment hearing is we're putting a call for hearing for February 25th at 9:30 a.m. Resolution to accept the affidavit of the Cowles County Treasurer for cancellation of uncollected personal property. A lot of these are, in fact, if you look down the list, the majority of these are senior exemptions, people that are seniors and they go through the process of applying and have their taxes reduced. And that makes up about 11 pages, but the majority of that is senior exemptions. And there could be some corrections in there also, and that amounted to right around 844,000. And that's consent agenda. That was short today.
No bills? I move approval of the consent agenda.
Okay, we have a motion to approve consent agenda. Any questions, comments on it?
Good.
No, I don't see anybody online. We'll call for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Two motion items today. I see Gina's.
Hey, good morning, Gina James, Health and Human Services. We have one item on the agenda today. This is an amendment to our consolidated contract with Washington State Department of Health. This amendment is adding a couple different funding streams. Not new, it's nothing, doesn't change anything that we're doing. It's kind of continuing what we have been doing. So it's adding a little over 31,000 for public health emergency preparedness. So that we're able to reimburse this fund when we participate in different planning activities for emergency preparedness with the Department of Emergency Management, the region, and the state. It's a little over 25,000 for Group B systems, for the work we do around Group B systems with permitting and testing for those systems. And then a little over 1.4 million for the Foundational Public Health Services funding. And this is the funding that we have seen this amount each year. If we don't utilize it by the end of the fiscal year, then we send back to the state what's not been utilized. We've most recently worked with the Board of Health and the commissioners on allocating some of this funding for Lower Columbia School Gardens. So there could be other projects in the future like that, but that's where that funding comes from. So again, this is just an amendment to that consolidated contract, adding this particular funding for this contract period.
If I remember right, was this contract period through June, first half of the year? Because the state's fiscal is different than ours.
Yeah, so this contract is kind of odd because the contract actually started January 1, but the funding is on the state fiscal year. So it's a little bit
Gotcha.
wonky in that sense. But so the contract started over January 1, and that's why we're now seeing these allocations at the beginning of the year. But the funding is kind of on the fiscal year. So we will sometimes see a partial allocation until we change fiscal years, and then we'll see the other allocation. So, yeah.
But we have until the end of the calendar year to allocate those funds and to use them.
We have, yeah, it kind of overlaps. So like with the 1.4 million, we will send at the end of June, we will send back at that time what we don't utilize of that. Now there will be another allocation that makes it essentially, that's an annual amount.
Okay.
And it just kind of, I guess that's what makes it a little bit wonky because the contract is different than the funding cycle. But it's that 1.4 annually, and then we have to work around that end of fiscal year deadline. So what we'll see in July or August is another amendment allocating that portion, but it's that 1.4 in a year's time.
How much have we received we received for this first fiscal year portion of that 1.4?
So we've actually, for this fiscal period, we've already received that 1.4.
Oh,
So this happens a little bit different than some of our other funding sources. This particular one, they send it to us, and then we have to reconcile at the end of the fiscal year. What we don't utilize, we send it back. And that's part of some of that budget discussion we were having yesterday, where it makes our budget look funny, because then sometimes we'll get it and we have to account for it in our budget, but then it doesn't reflect in actuals until later, or not at all, because we have to send it back. So that's why some of that conversation is a little funny as well.
And I think I mentioned this before. That's why you get to answer questions in your debate as to why we sent 800,000 back.
yeah, yeah.
Any other questions?
I move approval of the number 4, the contract amendment.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the contract amendment with the Washington State Department of Health. Any questions, comments? Anything on that? Seeing none, see no hands. Call for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Gina.
Okay, thank you.
Public defense.
Good morning again.
Good morning.
Morning, Ian.
I'm here, as we spoke yesterday, on a motion for approval for my conflict attorneys to be funded for the year of 2025.
State who you are.
I'm sorry? Oh, state who I am. I'm Ian Marr. I'm the director of the Cowles County Office of Public Defense. I should start with the formality. I apologize. The Office of Public Defense, and my name is Ian Marr. Ian? Yes, of course. So this, as it breaks down, really amounts to $1,200 per felony case that we appoint. As stated on the agenda, that amounts to an average of $12,000 a month, totaling $144,000 a year for these 3 attorneys, but they do provide a vital service. It is a contract that's longstanding with the county, and it provides court-appointed counsel for indigent criminal defendants when the Office of Public Defense has a conflict of interest.
We arrived at this amount from past history. And, I don't know how much to go into the contract. It's just something the purpose is to give, indigents the same level of defense that any person would have. And it's a contract we negotiate. We're not really mandated.
Correct.
It's just something we've chosen to negotiate and take care of.
Right. The alternative, of course, would be case by case as conflicts arise to reach out to Vancouver, basically, is where the nearest population of criminal defense attorneys can be found that would even be possibly willing to take these cases. But the fact that these three attorneys are locally based and headquartered, it allows us to have much quicker access to them. They have quicker access to their clients, the jails, the courts. So again, it is a pretty vital service they provide.
I appreciated your explanation of the contract yesterday. You did.
Oh,
Thank
of
you.
course, yes.
Any other questions? I'd entertain a
I'm-
motion on it.
I'm good.
I move to approve the Office of Public Defense Agreement with Morgan Law, number 5.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the agreement with Morgan Law, Joshua Gooday and Edward DeBrey. Any question? Oh, go ahead, Ron.
Just a simple protocol question is that are all of these cases that you defend face to face, or are you able to do some of them remotely over phone? Example, I have an acquaintance that's been working for years to get his disability through the court system, and that's went on and on and on with cell phone or other forms. So how do you handle the cases? Are they all in person or a variety of communication mechanisms?
The latter, a variety. For your acquaintance's disability hearing, I believe those courts, ever since COVID happened, still allow remote Zoom appearances in court. The criminal courts have now fully phased back to in-person hearings. So anytime somebody's on the record in court in a criminal hearing, they are in person. There are a few exceptions for individuals who can't travel or might be hospitalized. They can appear by phone or Zoom, but for our office, the Office of Public Defense, we are in person primarily now.
Okay, just question. Okay. thank you.
Of course.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll call for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Ian.
You too.
Before we head into public comments, I have a couple of things, and I don't know if Carolyn's on, she might want to speak to this. We had a question come through because the auditor has adjusted hours on Friday, and it came through from realtors because they had to change how they got docs recorded. And Carolyn and I had a conversation on it, and the explanation was Carolyn's had some turnover, and it's not a permanent thing. We're trying to get bodies in place to get it back open. And I told her I'd mention that today in case people had concerns that it's not a permanent condition. We're fighting in the auditor's office. She's trying to get bodies in place.
And is a routine work week that there's a lack from Monday through Thursday?
No, there's no issues with Monday through Thursday.
This is the Friday. one?
Yeah, sometimes you'll find in people close a home like on Friday and they want to move in over the weekend, but it can't get recorded if it's in the afternoon because right now it's a little bit short.
Right.
Yeah. So that was where it originated from.
Okay.
I thought I'd bring that up. Tomorrow at 2:30, we have Department of Ecology. I think I've mentioned that a few times. And Wednesday, February 5th, we have Mount St. Helens Institute. So with that, we'll turn it over to you. And I know Mr. Wood has some comments he wants to make. Yeah. Green light on there, Larry.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Thank you.
My name is Larry Wood, and I'm going to describe who I am, and then I'm going to describe a problem, and I'm going to propose a solution, but it's going to be maybe kind of shocking idea. I don't think any other counties in Washington are moving towards an idea like this, so I'd like to give my opinion, and, you know, people will have different views of whether I'm right or not, but I want to start. So I hope that we could work together with this wild idea, but it doesn't bother me if we don't, because I'm not going to make any money off what I'm proposing to do. But I've been a developer. I've developed over 100 homes in Longview, and I've succeeded 3 times and I failed once in 08. And so I know what success is like, and I know what failure is like. And one of the interesting things I've observed about housing is the people who need housing the most are served the least. And it's because it's hard to make money for the people when you serve the people who have the least amount of money. And I would even say, in my own opinion, and much of this is my own opinion, my own observations, 15 years ago, Longview, I live in Longview, I speak mostly of Longview, I know you guys are concerned about the whole county, but we really didn't have a housing affordability crisis 10 or 15 years ago, in my opinion. Now we do. It's horrendous. And what most people don't realize, and I speak, here's how I define an expert. If somebody knows more than 10,000 people living in their community, I would say that as a real estate developer, I'm one of the 5 experts in Longview. There's nobody who in the last 25 years has developed more homes that lives in Longview. There are people from outside who come in and develop more, but I know how to develop homes. I don't know everything about developing homes, but I've done it 3 times on large developments from 17 to 56 units. And I've got a track record of success. People love those neighborhoods. The 3 are, the one's right next to Mount Solo Road. There's a power station by I forgot the little food store, Baker's Corner. Then I did the gated community that is really a great neighborhood down by the middle school. It's called Willow Point. And then I did, I actually failed at this site. Most people don't realize I failed at the same site that I eventually bought back from the bank. And then I built a rental townhome neighborhood it's called West Point. And I actually own a very large piece that I'm beginning to talk with the city of Longview, where I'm approved for 350 units, multifamily, in West Longview. I bought it under the Trump administration. The rules changed so dramatically. I just walked away from it during the Biden administration because they changed the rules for development with onerous environmental regulations. I think those are probably going to have a little leniency, so I'm pursuing that with the city of Longview again. But so I just want to take like maybe 5 or 6 more minutes and just describe what I think. I think we have a number of problems for affordable housing. We have national problems, and these are only my opinion, but you can decide if I have a valid opinion, and there's a lot of nuances to it. There's a number of reasons why affordable housing is so challenging, is because governmental agencies love to help, but when they do, prevailing wage, when you are building vertically, then you have to, go to a whole different level of contractor. And so prevailing wage is really a problem for affordable housing. Now, I'm not opposed to prevailing wage, but I think if they really wanted to solve the problem, they would maybe only apply it to over 5 plexes or something like that, but they don't do that. If you build a tiny home, which is what I'm going to propose at the end as a solution, you have to get J.H. Kelly, level union people. If it's a $40,000 house, they'll build it for $100,000 because that's the way that it works, and they don't do it affordably. I know that the most recent from the ground up, I'm gonna say these numbers from my memory. I've consulted with the Housing Authority, and when great deals come on the market for apartments, I've notified the housing authority and said, hey, there's units that are only 140,000 a unit, which that's now cheap. It's hard to believe, but that's about as cheap as you can buy units. They're developing units out off 38th Avenue, and I believe that those are really close to 300,000 a unit is what the final costs were. So I was saying, hey, these are a little bit smaller, but they're less than half the price. Maybe you should do this. And they said, oh, we can't get the funding quick enough to be able to take advantage of that, so we just have to. And the thing is, those units that they paid 300,000 for are not even probably worth 200,000 on the market. You know, I mean, but as cash flow, they might be worth 200, 225, but you know, they end up paying 40% more than really probably what they're worth. It's very sad. So if we can't, you know, deal with that, and that's the way I observe it. We've got national prevailing wage challenges. We've got an extremely egregious state wage, not state wage, onerous environmental regulations. And I'm going to say, I'm not trying to talk you into helping my pocketbook by doing this idea, so I'm just going to tell you the truth. I loved seeing our current president talk to the board, the mayor of Los Angeles, and this might create frustration, but our president was speaking common sense about the stupid environmental governmental rules that were not allowing these people to get access to their property. And there's an enormous fire that wasn't served with fire. There's all these stupid rules, and we have a lot of stupid rules. And I've been following them for 35 years, and I used to look at them and say, hey, I think those have common sense. I think that the rules that the Department of Ecology creates actually make sense. I think it's good that we build better, warmer, more insulated homes. And I think now, I'm going to say after 35 years of being in this game, it is a game, and it's not common sense. And they are serving the planet. They are not serving people. That their priority is some religious, not godly, but a very religious thing. It's like fairy tale. And I don't think that I'm not accusing you of this, but our governmental leaders are not serving the people. And we've got an affordability crisis in housing, in my opinion, that's very intentional. We've got national rules. We've got egregious state rules that are some of the worst. We're a leader in environmental protection for housing that makes some of our housing some of the most affordable, even in Cowlitz County, where we have way more affordable housing than much. And then finally, locally, I really like the new leaders in Longview, but have you guys ever wondered, like I have, why there's not a tiny home community in Washington State that is really cool? Why not? I'll tell you another anomaly. Do you know that you cannot build an off-grid home in Washington State? If you don't use PUD power, you can't get a building permit, from my understanding. So we have this. We're told we should, you know, follow all the rules of the government and everything is so perfect. But when you really know the rules, like I do, and I don't know everything, but I think we are so poorly served by the rules of our government. And so I think, why couldn't Longview, why can't Cowlitz County provide a model of what tiny home communities could look like? I'm extremely proud of the 3 developments I've done. And if I didn't have a track record of success, I couldn't propose this crazy idea. But I have a crazy idea. You guys have excess land, and you may know of it, you may not know of it. I have a perspective of the history of your land, and I have kind of a crazy idea. And I hope that you'll invite me back to talk about it more. But you've got the fairgrounds over there, and I was actually given a notice by a former city official that said, Larry, you keep talking about tiny homes. I'll tell you a piece of property you should look at. You should look at the end of the fairgrounds by Peardale, because this is over a decade ago. They said, you know, the county paid a consultant to tell us what to do with the fairgrounds, how to make the fairgrounds better, and the consultant couldn't figure out what to do with the last 4 acres of Peardale. So they didn't designate anything to do with it. And so the previous county commissioners, I believe, accepted a grant towards an RV park. And that sounds like a good idea, but I'm going to tell you, as someone who understands the rules as they currently are in the city of Longview, they're some of the most anti-investor rules for RV parks. And so you guys have begun funding an RV park. I think you received some state money, and I don't know all about that. I haven't looked it up. But the city of Longview will not allow any long-term RVers in. And for a municipality, is almost as dumb as a church to own something like an RV park. The church I go to used to have rentals, and yet when people wouldn't pay, they didn't have the heart to get somebody in there that would pay, and it ended up being just a nightmare. And so they weren't making any money on the houses, so they didn't keep them up, so they became an eyesore. And it was just like embarrassing. I said, if you guys aren't going to steward these things, you shouldn't own them. And so I'm not for that particular church to own real estate because they didn't take care of it. But you guys are going to have all kinds of people, if you finish this RV park, that don't have any money. They have they're the druggies and everything that live in these lousy RVs. And I think they're going to have litigation against you if you make random rules of how old their RVs can be or can't be, or how much trouble can they raise in there. So I hope you don't do RVs, but I guess the thing is, I hope you do consider a tiny home development. So whether you just continue the RVs, that's fine. But my idea with the tiny home development is, I would love to see a really high quality tiny home development, and I would like you to ask if I could help you do it. And I actually have worked on this idea for 5 years, but the previous commissioners didn't like it. And so they kind of stockpiled a bunch of money for homelessness and stuff like that, but it actually creates an amazing opportunity because you guys have land and you have money that you need to designate towards people who are disadvantaged with housing. And I think one of the biggest opportunities is, I was talking to Jim Walsh and his legal team about what could be done because I want to see some progress in affordable housing. And I said, Jim, what if a municipality owned land and they did a lease to a developer very affordably, and they developed the underground at prevailing wage? Because if you guys do work, you have to pay prevailing wage. But I said, Jim, what if a developer leased a site of land and they agreed to put all the vertical housing with private funding? Is that, if the underground is done with prevailing wage, does the above ground vertical construction require, and he goes, nobody's ever asked that, but I'm going to study it. And a few years back, I got a report back from Jim Walsh's office that, if you don't receive any money going vertical, you can go vertical. So I went to one of the local lending institutions in town. It was a credit union. There's two, or there's three, I think, but there's two big ones. Either one of them would love to do this. I said, what if I came to you with a conservative idea and a land lease, and I built homes on Cowlitz County or the city, I've talked to the city of Longview about it too, on their land, and I didn't make a profit on building the stuff. So I don't know if you understand, but from my perspective as a developer, usually a developer has no ability to influence the ordinances because usually they're viewed as a greedy developer. But here I am, maybe I have been a greedy developer, I am a successful developer, but I'm coming to you saying, I don't care if you don't invite me to do this or not, because I'm going to have to donate over a year of my life and I'm not going to make anything. But I want to see what we could do, because I don't see public-private partnerships when there's transparency and lack of greed. You guys have money. What if I'm egregious enough to say, why don't you do a land lease for me with improved lots on a plan that we both agree to? I would build, say 10 units per acre of tiny homes. If there's 4 acres back there, I could get 40 homes. It would be novel and new because there's no ordinance. So you guys have huge influence, and I would actually have credibility if I wasn't making money. And I would prove that I didn't make any money. And then Rick could understand this, but I would make a commitment, because what we need rentals that are $600 or $700 a month. There's nobody, it's impossible to build new quality domiciles for $600 or $700 a month. And so I would like to build rentals that you guys would own, but I would get to control and build them. I would have transparent, vertical use of funds, but you wouldn't have anything to do with it. I mean, you would get to approve it, but then at the end of the 40 years is what I propose, but it's all negotiable. It all comes back to you. That makes it really easy for you to vote. You're spending the money that you've collected on recording fees for your own property for a few years, for a number of years during the effective rest of our lives. Somebody will be monitoring that, and they'll be open to criticism if they don't do it fairly and justly. They will make a profit, because Rick would understand this. When I went to the credit union, they said, well, I know, and he would know, that traditionally a credit union wants a debt service coverage ratio of 1.25. They said, in this situation, that's a weird idea, but we really like it. We'd be open to it. We'd request a debt service coverage ratio of 1.35. So that just means that I would have to make a little bit more of a profit. And so I would live within the constraints of that number, and I would volunteer to produce the records. So that's kind of what I wanted to say, is I have an idea, and I would love to come to you. I actually, 4 years ago, paid an architect and a designer to do a layout, and I have plans already drawn. I've spent thousands of dollars of my own money. And I just think it's really a novel idea. But it would be interesting to me if the city of Longview would help develop an ordinance for tiny homes. That would be great. You know, Oregon's got a bunch of tiny home projects. I'm not saying they're all amazing, but there's pretty nice ones from my observation down at Seaside. I don't know if you've seen those. They're kind of 2-story. They're probably about 500 square feet. And what I'm thinking is, for single people and maybe single parents, I'm thinking of homes under 400 square feet. So these homes are not going to be expensive, but what I would envision is 10 units per acre with a really nice community hall, so that if you live in a home that's under 400 square feet, but you have a birthday party, you need a room that's pretty good size, you know? And so it would be something I'd be so proud to put my name on. I would do it with the quality that I've done with every one of my developments. And I just hope that we can work together. And so I won't take any more of your time, but I'd like to come and bug you once a month until you tell me to stop talking about it, because I would love to start next year. If we can come to, and if somebody else takes my idea and you don't work with me, I love it. Because I'm not going to make any money at it. But I have a track record of being able to borrow the millions of dollars, and I would be responsible with it. And I appreciate your time. Thank you. Do you have any questions before I sit down?
Yeah, I do.
Go ahead.
Yeah, you mentioned to keep the month and the rent down to $600 or $700 a month. How would you control the people that are getting in there? You got to put a lid on, you know, what their income is or their situation is, so that somebody who's well-to-do can't move in there and take
Right.
advantage of it?
You know, Steve, that's a super interesting question, because our former governor made a rule that the first person that is qualified can get in. And it depends on what the rules are then, but I don't want the richest people to be able to do it. I've even thought about that's actually a very unique place where it's actually very livable and walkable. It's one of the few undeveloped neighborhoods that's actually walkable, because, you know, walking to Wenco and there's a bus route. And I've actually talked to the city of Longview. They'd move the bus route to even pick up right there if we wanted to. So, I mean, the whole city and everything is willing to do it, but I would provide a cost of what it did cost to do everything, and then I would show a report to Rick and, you know, you guys, and people would understand who are in banking. There's a debt service coverage ratio of 1.35, so the rents are going to be split out this way. And I think you could explain that. But you know, it's so if the rents end up being 800, because that's the cheapest I could do it, then they'd be 803. If I could do it so they were 603, they'd be 603. You know, it would depend what it costs, because I can't exactly determine it, but it would be a transparent thing. And I'm sure it could be under 800. I think it'd be in the
I'd be more than
700.
happy to look at the information and the numbers and discuss this with you. Uh, I could see some complications that I'd love to hear how you would control, like somebody, instead of having one car in the driveway, having six in a motorhome parked alongside of a mini home. So anyway, yeah, I like your idea.
And Larry, I'd just like to commend you on bringing this forward, because I have to say, I agree with you wholeheartedly that the relationship between the private and the public sector is one that can be further developed, and we can utilize that relationship to help our community if we work together.
Mhm.
Obviously, there's some things that are going to have to get worked out, and this isn't the time or the place to go through that. But the thinking outside the box and creativity, I think, is something that we need, given the limitations and all the regulation, everything that the government shoves down our throat. We need to have thoughts and talks like this about how we can improvise and or mitigate some of the stuff that the state imposes on us. And I think it's a great idea with a lot of potential that I would be interested in talking about.
Yeah.
Thank you.
To get affordable housing, what we would consider affordable, you're not gonna be able to stay in the box. You're gonna have to go outside the box, and that's what Larry's proposing, and I don't think there's anybody sitting up here that is concerned about being outside the box. I know you guys well enough that, yeah, I think we'd love to continue talks on that, Larry.
I was to say one last thing. The goal of doing it would be to do it in a transparent way, but also a way that other people could do it as well. So yeah, I've got a track record of success, but after this model, if we're able to do it, was done, the whole goal would be to bring other people to this area and show them, hey, look what could be done. Here's how it could be done. Here's exactly what we did. Here's the template of how we did it. We made a few mistakes. We could do it better, but I want it to be copied. And I'm really excited. So thanks for the response, and I look forward. I'm going to bug you once a month. And so thanks a lot, you guys.
Thanks, Larry.
Thank you.
And that's why we don't have a 3-minute buzzer. You guys have any comments on that, or you want to talk? I think it's an interesting idea. I'd be interested to hear what you think.
Yeah, just again, playing inside and outside the box. My mind goes over again, prefabricated units, that's one of the ways you get through some of the regulations, and you get a workforce that's able to work fast and do things and set them on it. But then when you go to the City of Longview Utilities and you got a $3,000 or whatever the price is for every single sewer line you hook up and other things, you'd have to work with the communities and say, hey, it's a small unit, we're half the price or whatever, and doing things. So there's a lot of things you would have to work with. Regarding the occupancy and the quality, there's pros for having affordable people in there, but in our mixed economy, there's also a good benefit for having truly financially successful people mixing with other people together for synergy and for working together. Because the example, you can talk to people forever, but nothing like saying, hey, when you sit down with someone that is on a kind of a ground for successful level and having some finances in place and budgeting, it sets a good example.
Ron, I would agree with you. And what I'd say to that is, to Larry's idea, I have clients who are making $75,000, $80,000 a year, and they can't afford to buy a house.
Yeah.
And an $80,000 a year job 10 years ago, they would have been able to buy at minimum a middle-class home. And that's no longer the situation. So I think that would happen almost naturally, given, depending on what the rents were. But that's a very good point.
I do have a couple of questions, if you don't mind. I'm always on the negative side of everything, and I don't mean to be, because it sounds like a great idea. But what if you have a fire? How would it be insured, considering is it county or your money is mixed? How would that happen with insurance? And then also, I would like to see it monitored to the fact that there will be no drug usage in this complex, if that's if that's, available. Would that be something that you would be taking care of? Is it going to be a monitored facility or not?
Do you mind if I answer 15 seconds of questions and then?
Make sure the green light's on.
I would love to, I'm going to answer those two questions and then future questions, maybe if I get invited and it's an agenda item, then people could come with all their questions. It wouldn't be any different than any other thing. The county with my imagination would own the land, but it would be insured, and whoever the owner is, which
So they'd be
would be, I would be the owner of the structures temporarily, but when the lease runs out, the county owns the property. So it's a land lease. It's one of the most secure things and one of the best money makers there is. It's a very secure position for the county because they're going to get their land back. And, but it would be my responsibility, my insurance company's problem. And, I really appreciate your question, but I have a number of rentals, dozens, scores of rentals, and I don't mandate that. And I don't, but if people are stupid, they get to find someplace else that's not as good to live. I mean, my neighborhood is, you can talk to the rental property managers. My neighborhoods are the best neighborhoods to live that one person owns the whole street. And they really want to live there. And if they're stupid, they get kicked out. They have to go live at a less good place. So I don't want to control everything that people do, but if they're stupid, they won't get a good thing. And
Okay,
this
I appreciate hearing that, but with that, in that vein, then, say that you have somebody, because my grandparents used to be property owners with motels and hotels. And there were times when people would not, and rentals, I should say, with the rentals, they would not pay, next month. So that would be your problem, but the county would be getting their fee every month, but that would be your
Yeah.
problem.
I'm going to just say, and I'm going to not answer more questions I want to take away, but my idea would be the county would give a very simple lease. I'm going to be egregious to say $1 a year or whatever for the opportunity, but I provide very affordable housing, only covering the cost of the vertical. I wouldn't have to cover the cost of the land. And usually the land in the underground would be 35 or 40% these days of what the developer, so that's how come the rent could be, only 60% of what would normally be attained. Maybe it'd be cheaper. Maybe it'd be in the 500s, the rent, but I think it'd be over 600 with the clubhouse. So, but I would love to, I don't mind, answering questions personally, but I don't want to take the.
Okay,
but-
well, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. It's just that like I say, I'm sorry, I'm a negative person. I just thought if the renters would be in arrears with their payments, would it affect the county? Would you not get your monthly lease? It wouldn't. Okay, that's great then. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, we have Board of Health starting at 10. If there's nothing else, I appreciate Mr. Wood coming in and we look forward to spending more time with him. I think it's a unique concept, a good idea, and we have to, if we truly want to talk affordable housing, we have to do something outside the box and try something different. And I think he's put the work in, and so we look forward to spending more time on that.
Absolutely.
Okay, with nothing else, we will adjourn this meeting, but remember in 15 minutes, Board of Health will fire up. Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you.